I feel like I should be saying hello, but I've already had a chat to you all informally. Okay, so we went to the UK, and one of the things that we did there was present to the Plastics Pact Network. Now, most of you would be familiar with the Plastics Pact. The first one was the UK with RAP. Chile's now got something up. France is working, but there's a whole heap of other geographies that are also starting to do this work. So it was really interesting to be part of that conversation about what's happening in South Africa and Canada, Portugal, Netherlands, and so a few of them did presentations, including ourselves, and talked about where they're at with their Plastics Pact and what they're developing. The reality is a lot of them are just in the very early initial stages, but we've got a couple of slides here from a few of those that did presentations, and I thought I'd just run through that tonight to give you a bit of a flavour of what the conversation was about and some of the work that we're doing. So let me do that. So Canada are very much in their early stages. They're actually starting to talk about, well, what can their targets be? What will their framework be? How and what will they deliver for Canada as part of their Plastics Pact? And they've come up with a vision to make Canada a world leader in building a sustainable, prosperous, zero-waste, low-carbon emitting circular economy that benefits the lives of people at home and abroad. That's a pretty big vision. Really, their emerging focus area is advancing a circular plastics economy. And you'll see this theme as you look at the different organisations, and it really is about, okay, if we're doing a circular economy, let's get something right first. What can we get right first? And a lot of, obviously in this space, it's about focusing on plastics, one of the more lower performing type of material streams in terms of recyclability and reuse, etc. So they're all focusing on that space. And then we had RAP, and they've obviously got the UK Plastics Pact, and depending on which side of the line you were standing on, the international timeline you were standing on, it was either us or or RAP that came out with their targets first. I say it was us. Peter will tell you it was them. But they've been doing some really great work, and they're probably the more advanced. I would say globally, in terms of geographies around the world, who is the most advanced or the most progressed in the work in this space. I would say it's the UK and Australia. And trust me, after going all the way over there and sitting there and hoping to, have a aha moment and, lots of light bulbs going off, it was really a lot of understanding that we're all very much at the same stage, and there's a lot of work to be done on the plastics issue globally. That's not a negative thing. It's actually really important to understand where we're all at and how we can support each other on this within this global movement towards progressing the plastics issue. So RAP have done some interesting work around a roadmap to 2025. They're probably, I'd say, about 6 months in front of us on the single-use plastics issue. They've done a lot of work in the last 12 months around that with consultation and working groups. So their roadmap and their work around single-use plastics is slightly more advanced, but we will catch them soon. We've got 2 projects running now on single-use plastics and some work that we're doing with governments in Australia as well, which will progress that quite rapidly. Then we had the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is a really interesting situation. Here's a situation where you've got essentially an APCO type organisation in the Netherlands who delivers on packaging, but they have also created a separate organisation as a plastics pact. Having talked to both the people who are running the packaging and the people who are running the plastics pact, one of the things I wanted to red flag to myself and to Australia in doing this work is don't do that. Don't separate the issues. Plastic, and yes, there's a lot of things that are made of plastic that aren't packaging, but the packaging space is probably, well, not probably, it is the space that has the largest volume in terms of material stream and the biggest capability with the most diverse stakeholders to be able to actually drive an overall plastic benefit. So to be really aware that Plastics Pact and that kind of work really needs to be done in coordination and with the packaging, because that's where if you can get it right in that space, you can get it right in the other plastic spaces as well. So it was really interesting. The Netherlands are really only just new at that, and they've just started to kick that off, and they've also working on their metrics and reporting, and also some materiality stuff as well that they're working on. So that's a little look at their current website for the Plastics Pact there. Then we moved on to measuring and progress, and this is where you really started to see the difference between where the various geographies are at. Most of them weren't even in this conversation. There's only ourselves and the UK that are doing any kind of reporting, and that means for RAP, they focus on these targets and the scope of those targets. And this is an example of their reporting. So they work from, you report in through an Excel spreadsheet, and essentially a download of material usage, etc. It was quite funny when we were doing the presentations. Peter Skelton from RAP was up before me, and he was very much, he got up there and he started explaining it, and he goes, every time he explained something, he'd say, however, I preface it that Brooke's going to get up after me and hers is way better than ours. So it was good to hear that. It was good to hear that we're doing really well and that we've got a system that's recognised globally as leading. And it was good to see the approach that others are taking as well. And then we spoke about our packaging sustainability framework, the continual improvement model, and the actually driving progress and success through the reporting of members. So all in all, it was really interesting to kind of get a feel for where everybody was at and what they were thinking. But it was also it was a reminder that we should not buy into the kind of colonialism I think we suffer sometimes, where we think everybody just does everything better than us, and actually appreciate how advanced and progressed Australian communities and Australian industry are in the work that we're doing. Don't for a moment think that there isn't a hell of a lot more to do. There is, but we are actually really nailing this in terms of having a really strong, strategic, progressive way forward for packaging and plastic. So with that, we will take some questions, I think.
So has anybody got any questions for Brooke? Yeah.
So you quickly mentioned that Canada is working on their own version of what they do. Just thinking Canada is kind of similar to Australia in some ways, given that it's got massive geography and a small population that's concentrated in capital cities. Is there anything that we can learn from them, or vice versa, in terms of dealing with those challenges?
Yeah, definitely.
So just to check, did everybody hear that this was a conversation about the similarities between Canada geographically? Great. Thanks, Nina.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's on or not, but yeah, Nina, it was. There's always something to learn, and I think what's important is that even though we're more progressed than they are in terms of the way in which we've got the collective impact and the collaboration of industry and government working together already, which is great, that means we're probably a few years in front of them, but there's definitely things to learn from them because they have a different regulatory model. So they have a mandatory system, and that obviously means that their packaging organisation works differently, has a full end-of-life recovery, and there's important work to be done with those guys in understanding exactly what you say. It's very similar in terms of, the geography and the population density. So there's definitely some things to leverage there, but in this space, in terms of the things that we're looking at in the Plastics Pact in terms of measuring progress and managing it, Australia would be more advanced than Canada in that, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just a question, in Canada being mandatory, are their recycling rates any better, or are they still victim to the worldwide pressures that we are?
Exactly the same, except for the Canada program, APCO has an annual revenue of about $6 million to deliver the work that we do. Canada's $400 million. No. Do you have $400 million, Barry? Yeah, we'd like to know if Barry's got $400 million.
But it is an interesting challenge for us to be able to deliver as much as them with a much leaner organisation.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah, were you surprised that Australia is kind of in the lead in global terms?
I'd really like to answer that and say no. No, of course. It was, the reality was I was pleasantly surprised. And I think that's because I think we tend to be a little bit insular here, and we think, and it's really easy to buy into the negative narrative that, media, excusing media and that are here, but sometimes media, no, but sometimes that story sells better. It's a better story. It's something that people go, oh, really? And so we tend to sometimes focus on that at the cost of not understanding or appreciating the progress and the positivity of the work that's being done already. And so I was, to some extent hoping to go over there and go, oh, wow, look, we're going to take that, I'm going to R&D, rip off and duplicate that, borrow that and bring it home. And there wasn't a lot of that. There was a lot of great collaboration and a lot of opportunities where you can see that you could do more and we could help each other more. But there wasn't that big, wow, that's fantastic, let's bring that home and drop that here. There was some interesting learnings around when and what regulatory interventions and levers and when they should be pulled. And I think one of the things that I took from the European model, the very heavily mandated European model, is it doesn't give life to collaboration because you've got a compliance mindset. So people are working from, I'm going to do this because government's making me do this, and I'm not going to do any more than this. Where our whole model is about this, it's about getting up that pyramid and being and doing and progressing. And you don't get that in that model because it's a compliance model. They're not having to make the business case. They don't have to show the value proposition. You're just going to do this because government's making you do this. And one of the things in the plastics pack that I got asked a lot about was, I had a slide, it was about slide 3, and it was about our sustainability pyramid. And they're like, well, how do you work with industry? How do you get them to do that? That's what they wanted to know more. I wanted to tell them all about the framework and the measuring, the metrics, and oh, that's so cool. And they're like, we're not even there. We want to know how we get industry to do more. And so that I found really fascinating.
I think that's a really interesting observation. Compliance often builds a perverse outcome of just reaching a level there and no further. But what's really interesting is you talked a lot about the collaboration, Brooke. How are we going to make sure that we maintain this and keep this fantastic R&D that we're doing in that neck of the woods?
Well, it's actually, that's interesting. We had, you can see up there, there's Zero Waste Scotland. So I spent some time with the guys in Scotland, and they've got an organisation very similar to APCO, but theirs isn't just about packaging, it's about the whole circular economy, so all waste streams. So they've got an organisation of about 120 people, and Anthony and I were on the phone with them late one night last week, and there was like 4 or 5 of them on the phone, and us, and we talked all about things. They're in the process of implementing a container deposit scheme, and there's a few things that they've already worked on that we're working on now. So we spent, I think it was meant to be an hour, it was about an hour and 45 minutes just talking about, sharing ideas and bouncing things back and forward between their experience and the Australian experience, and then we set that to do that again in another month. So this is the kind of thing that's great about this kind of tour and going and meeting these people. You make that face-to-face connection where you can then get on the phone and follow through, and you can share. And we had a range of resources that they've shared with us and we're sharing with them, and we've had those arrangements with several organisations now. So it means we get to bring best practice back here, and we also get to help other geographies to do some of their work as well.